Alrighty, we're live. Hello, friends. Can everyone hear me all right? There was a bit of a delay, but anyways, I have, for anybody who's new, this is, of course, Subscriber Appreciation Day. It's once a month where I sit down with my subscribers, answer questions, talk to friends of the channel, stuff. This week, or this month, I don't have a guest, so it's just going to, all right. So this month, I'm going to just talk to you guys, just me, answer your questions, talk a little bit about some upcoming changes to the channel, and have a nice relaxing time there's a lot of really big stuff coming up. I went to the YouTube space last weekend, and Step Back History is switching into a weekly YouTube show starting, well, on Thursday. So if you have any questions about that or anything else about history, you'll let's see how it goes. Question. All right, first question. Aren't you an anarchist? The answer is yes, optimally. What's your occupation actually? I am a PhD student in history. That's not exactly an occupation, but I am paid by the university for a number of small jobs. Over the summer, I did like a freelance job where I was making recruitment videos for the history department. And this school year, instead of being a TA, I'm going to be a research assistant who focuses on digital work. So I am going to be doing history researchers at my university do digital research work, and I'm going to maintain and check out the machines that are in our digital history lab and teach people how to use them and all that kind of stuff. So that's my upcoming job in September. For the most part, it involves me making more recruitment videos and teaching people how to use some things and answering questions about emails. All right. All right, alternate world of a Southern victory lore, part 3 debunked. All right, so, man, I forgot the questions come heavy in this thing. So, yeah, this is something that was pretty big this month. Is you had the No Confederate thing happen, and you had the Alternate History Hub, what if slavery never existed? And also he's in the middle of doing like a what if the Confederates won the American Revolution and a whole bunch of other stuff. And yeah, there's a few things we can talk about in that. So first of all, I am in the middle of the road when it comes to Confederate. When it comes to Confederate, I think that it wasn't super fair to write the show off before it had even existed. But given how Dan and Dave, the creators of Game of Thrones, are not exactly the most crazy, sensitive people when it comes to things, especially when it came to rape in several seasons of the show, I am not super optimistic that they could play with racial tensions in America as well, but I am also open to be surprised. And they do have the writers of like Empire and the good, not the Good Wife. I want to say there's two very well respected black authors who are, or black writers who are going to do really well. So that I at least have hope, and at the very least, Amazon's doing a similar show, and I'm pretty much on board for both of them. All right, so, okay. All right, so Morta Blunt's writing out a very standard justification of the American nuclear program, basically destroying the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And yeah, the idea is that the Japanese were ready to fight to the death, and that the Americans were saving lives by using weapons of mass destruction. So while that is possible, I think in my video I said that it starts off with this discussion about like the death estimate count that they had was much higher during the war and has kind of gone down since. But yeah, it still never equaled out. You'd still lose a lot of people. So there's a few other things though, and that is it does. All right, how do I wrap this one out in a way? So the politics of nuclear weapons are really strange, and so the use of a nuclear weapon by the United States, this like weapon of mass destruction, really does take a lot of wind out of the sails of any attempt that the United States had a sort of moral case to win. So it was like a crime against humanity, and the Allies did commit crimes against humanity, and they kind of get written off because they won. Even if using nuclear weapons were justified, you'd still at least want to own up to that a little bit and say like, ooh, yeah, not nice, even if it was necessary. But there's a few other things, like the United States. Oh yeah, the fire bombings were even worse. But there's other things like that Japan had attempted to surrender already beforehand. Like there's this kind of image that the people who justify the American bombing, that the Japanese were ready to like hold up to the last man, and they were like these fanatic monsters that were ready for everything. But the Japanese had already tried to surrender like several times over the last few years. I think the most recent one was at Potsdam. And the Americans decided to make a heavy emphasis on this unconditional surrender without a clear reasoning why. And it all seems to come down to a couple things, and that is they really wanted to destroy any chance of Japan coming back as a world power. Look how well that turned out. They wanted to stop any Soviet incursion. They basically didn't want Japan to be like Korea, like the Korean Peninsula. I mean, like not that they knew that the Korean stuff was going on at the time, but like they didn't want that kind of situation where the Soviets had a bunch of Japanese territory and they had to deal with that like they were dealing with it in Europe. And because the Manhattan Project had already cost them so much money that they would look a little strange if they had never used it, if they like spent years of research on this weapon and then never used it. And I think they chose to use it because in this period they did not see the Japanese as fully human. They were still a very harsh racial segregation in America. And yeah, it's just it's crazy. So hello, Stefan. Cringe level 79%. Was my answer that bad? Ooh. All I can say, Morta Blunt, is if you are going to make this case, then I really hope that the North Koreans don't think the same way that you think. Like, I hope that there's no North Korean Morta Blunt who thinks that using nuclear weapons is going to be the safer option and save more North Korean lives than if they, just get invaded by the United States. So, yeah. Um, yeah, maybe if you like look at the situation with the Americans, maybe it's true that they really didn't appreciate the magnitude of the weapon they had, and then they used it not really knowing what the future of that weapons was going to be, which makes sense. But you could say at the very least that it was a callous decision and it resulted in a lot of innocent deaths. And at the same time, it kind of opened a can of worms that have really screwed up the actual world. Do you think that Russia will collapse? No. Uh, Russia's pretty. I don't know a ton about the internal politics of Russia, but Russia looks really big. I mean, it's the biggest country by landmass, but it's also it's more populated than Canada, but it's still mostly populated in certain regions. And while you might see some breakoffs in places like Chechnya or something like Kamchatka, where there's distinct stuff going on, but I don't know. Breaking up a country is such a huge thing that you'd have to have something really, really, really important happen in Russia. And at the moment, Russia seems pretty, for all of the craziness that it's doing everywhere else, pretty stable. Yeah, Putin's got his fingernails in there hard. Okay. Tell us about the Ainu. The Ainu are the indigenous people of the Hokkaido region of Japan. It's kind of interesting. I took a class on them when I was in an indigenous studies course when I was an undergrad, and the Ainu people. So they live on the island of Hokkaido in Japan. The Japanese kind of annexed their territory, and the Ainu are still around. But the thing about them is that Japan, they don't jive with Japanese culture in some really interesting ways. The Ainu people, like a lot of people who live on islands in the Pacific, have ritual tattoos, and kind of as for various reasons. Today they say it's because of the Yakuza. Japan actually has a huge, really nasty taboo against getting tattoos, which is not super fair for people for the Ainu, where they get these tattoos as part of their culture. But not only that, but they get really visible tattoos. Ainu people get tattoos on the bottom jaw of their face, and that was that they get there's a lot of persecution against that kind of thing, and there's a lot of intolerance of difference in culture in Japan. And it's just interesting to know that there's parts of Japan that have indigenous people, and it's pretty nasty. Which is worse, National Bolshevik or Dunganism? All right. I'll answer your Dunganism question. First, I'll have to Google what the hell Dunganism is. Dunganism is, okay, so it's a fascist ideology, or wait. Debate fascism? Do we really need to debate fascism? Come on, Reddit. Duncan is a huge fanboy of Heidegger and Evola, who is desperately trying to be original, which makes his writing seem like he's on drugs while writing them. He also has a strong desire to connect his philosophy to politics. He believes that so far, most political theories fall into one of three categories: liberal democracy, communism, or fascism. That all the systems based on those systems are doomed to fail, and that we should focus on creating the fourth political theory. I don't know if he has a clear idea of what those political theory would look like. Gosh, I've never heard of this thing before. This is Duncanism. It's brand new to me. And is National Bolshevik different from like regular Bolsheviks? Because regular Bolsheviks are pretty nasty. To kind of answer Guka's question at the same time, I actually think that people who are authoritarian communists are, if anything, worse than like your typical liberal capitalist, because there's no such thing as common ownership of anything if a government owns it. And essentially it's just, I mean, I parrot the old anarchist line, it's just state capitalism. It's just capitalism, except that the state owns all of the private property as well. And it's just tyranny. Like, yeah, tankies are, I don't know. I think tankies have far too, for anybody who doesn't know what a tankie is somebody who believes that, who are like old school communists, like people who actually believe in like authoritarian, like the Soviet Union type thing. Like they did nothing wrong. Communists, these are people who go on Twitter and do stuff like defend North Korea and look the other way about Cuba having political prisoners and defend Stalin. And it's like, now Stalin and a lot of these people, like, they were awful, awful human beings because they took a totalitarian government, somehow called it Marxist, and then proceeded to be these like imperial powers that really, I mean, for what they accomplished as far as like education and stuff, really did horrible, horrible things. And a lot of people died. I've done some research in a little bit about the Holodomor thing, and that's like, oh gosh, like the planned famines and all sorts of nasty stuff. You can't really have communism or Marxism with a state. It's just not possible. The state is a violent agent that does things without consent. And if you do these things without like consent and without and in an authoritarian manner, you're just going to recreate the kind of stuff that happened, recreate brutality. So authoritarian centrist. I really have to figure out what this Dunganism is, because first of all, it has a really dumb name, but man, those are some deep cuts into like what kind of weird, strange offshoot ideologies have been happening lately. Oh, another really thing about tankies, and this is just where I'll complain, is that it's also, you'll find that there's these weird people who consider themselves like Marxists who voted for Trump because they are either like Slavoj Žižek, who think that he's going to be some sort of accelerationist force, i.e. bring about the apocalypse so that we can rebuild ourselves in the, or piss off so many people that we have a Marxist revolution. Or they're just like, they just like Trump because he's like authoritarian and that's what they want. And it just shows like, this is like, you know, in the deepest corners of lefty pole and stuff. And it's just like, ugh, no. And they also think that they can say that they believe in the equality of everyone, but then like have still use like super misogynistic and super like homophobic language. Like it's bullshit. No, tankies are full of crap. All right. What's your opinion about the cuneiform tablets? You know, the ones about trigonometry that made the news? I haven't heard about those. I don't read Hebrew. Shfilbas. Man, if tankies were actually just fans of Thomas the Tank Engine, I would have thought that that would actually be a great ideology. I'd be behind that. Thomas the Tank Engine was a pretty nice guy, if I recall correctly, for a train anyway. Mexi, I still have no idea. Man, only bro, you dig into the deepest areas of strange political ideology and go to some weird places. Okay, I watched Wonder Why's latest video just before this on the oldest country in the world. Thoughts on the video, or if you haven't watched the topic. The oldest country. Oh, countries are a weird thing to talk about that. Like, so I remember hearing at one point that one of the oldest countries on earth was Hungary because it's like the one country that has gone through several things with, I don't know. It's that aside, like there's sort of a weird ship of Theseus going on because like if you think that like France, some people say that like France is a really old country, you know, dates its origins back to like 900 AD. But like if you think about how France is like on its third republic, like do you consider a revolution a new country? Like is it the same country if it has roughly the same borders but completely different government? Even if it is the same borders, like France's borders used to be like where I'm sitting now, and they used to like go all the way to like, you know, what they used to call French Indochina, and that's crazy. Like I don't know, countries are. I don't really have the thoughts. I haven't really written this down to articulate it the right way, but there's like this concept that we have around countries and governments that's so Western and so like stuck in like a Western mentality that like all land must fall under a border that belongs to one people and they have a capital and like all these things. It's like the concept is so ingrained that it's going to be a hard psychic thing to overcome. And it's odd because like it's not like countries are they're a very unnatural process. There's like a lot of books and like about how in the 19th century we had to write do a whole bunch of like media construction to create countries because we really don't have any concept of the nation. We have the concept of like community and family and stuff like that. But like but you actually have to like do things to make a nation concept. And if you want to start around something like that, you can go to Benedict Anderson with Imagine Communities. It's pretty good on there. Oh gosh! All right. There's so much stuff. There's a 12-year-old ANCAP on YouTube. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. ANCAPs have the economic idea. ANCAPs have the economic sensibility of a 12-year-old. Can you make a video about the Lost Tribes of Israel? I had planned on it at one point to talk about Semitic conversion things. My wife's not a really big fan of that series anymore, but if I ever pick it up, the Lost Tribes of Israel thing is supposed to be on my list of, supposed to be on the next video. China would be a good contender, although China is also, at many times in its history, been many countries in one and then many countries. So it depends upon what your definition is. A Korean friend was okay. Again, Park Yoel. I don't have any idea what that is. All right, before we get any more in the weeds, I should say a few more things about how this channel is going to work out in the next little while. So I have, I'm going to have weekly videos coming out every Thursday starting next week. And I also went to the YouTube space, which means that the videos are like shot in 4K and have beautiful, wonderful look to them. The first one's done. And if you become a patron, I will I have a link. Any patrons who go to Patreon can see my can see that the video early, but it'll be out next week. What subject would you like to cover one day? All right. Okay, so Lion24 asks what subject I'd like to cover one day. There's a lot of videos that I have on my list that are like videos I'd really love to make, but there's no story in the actual video. Like, there's no way for me to write it in a way that makes sense. I have a video coming up in the next month that is on theory and ideas rather than actual like history content. And it's a weird script, and I'm less happy with it than I have been with other ones. But that'd be something I'd like to really develop, is just doing like history. Oh, okay. Just watched a piece of you, and it's BS at its best. Thanks, Tim Shade. You're a nice person. Nice concern trolling. How about the Minoan civilization and how it became the Atlantis myth Plato wrote about? That is a fun story. I do like that there's an actual civilization that we know about that could have possibly been good, or that could have been like, the whole thing, or it could have been the Atlantis we talk about. The fact that Atlantis got built up so much is so crazy. I actually watched a video. I got some comments this week about people saying stuff about some stuff about people complaining that I didn't mention Atlantis in one of my videos because they thought that like Native American people didn't come over the land bridge; they came from Atlantis, and I was like, oh goodness, okay, whatevs. Okay, so SHP Ill Bass asks says that they've never been to a subscriber appreciation day. How do they work? So subscriber appreciation day is a monthly video that I do on the last Sunday of each month. Usually I have a friend who comes in and hangs out with me, somebody who I've done YouTube videos with or something, and we hang out, we talk about stuff, we get into the weeds, and I answer questions from the comments, and we have a really good time. Usually it goes for about maybe 2 hours or so, but it usually ends when we run out of steam. I don't know what One Nation is. Grant Hurst. All right, Grant Hurst. He's good enough. I actually met him at VidCon. We had dinner together one night. He's a really nice guy, and I think that his videos are good with good subject material, and I think that if he put his mind to it, he could go pretty far with it. It's just that he just needs to maybe put down an investment on some equipment or kind of rethink things. And he's already he's in a Slack group for YouTube educators, and he's already talked about wanting to do a kind of creative reimagination of his channel. And I think that he'll go really far with that. But yeah, I had dinner with him and Mr. Beat and my wife and Mr. Beat's wife, and it was a really fun night. Tim Shade is throwing shade. Oh man! All right, what are your thoughts about North American Economic Union? I know that it's like the rampant conspiracy mongering thing that everyone freaks out about. I wouldn't mind it. I go to the United States enough that if there was one currency between the two countries, I actually go between all of NAFTA countries enough. I go to Mexico now enough that if there was one currency between Canada, America, and Mexico, I would be in such better shape. It would be probably beneficial for Canadians too, because American goods typically are cheaper, and if we got rid of stuff like duties and prices and stuff like that, then everything in America would be cheap. It'd be wonderful. Don't worry about Tim Shade. He's just saying me bad. Trust me. That's hardly the meanest comment I've ever gotten. Ideas are a bit leftist or revisionist. What do people even mean by the term revisionist history? History is like science. Like you would never have say if I'm trying to think of a thing like when Pluto was no longer designated as a planet because we didn't have a definition of a planet before then. They didn't call it revisionist science. When we throw out a previous model or theory, we don't call it revisionist science. I don't understand why when history changes because of new information, new analysis, things like that, all of a sudden it's called revisionist history. I don't know. Oh man, Atlantis is my... What makes a country a country? Is it a constitution? Not all countries have constitutions. The people in the country, well, there's you can talk about diaspora or something, or another nation recognizing it as a country. At the moment, if you want to talk about what a real country is an organization that has taken a swath of territory and claimed that it is theirs, and has other countries with militaries backing them up. And typically, they also have enough violent goons on the ground to enforce that they are it's basically like gangs and gang territory. So if you're an organization that has enough violent people on the ground to say this territory is mine, and you have enough friends that back you up, then you can be a country. In any other case, you're not a country. And the world is basically carved up amongst different oligarchies around the world. Some of them are nicer than others, but all of them are inherently conquerors. Can we thanks. Can we talk about your new channel and what that's all about? Thank you, Kelly, who is just across the room. I started a YouTube channel called Historian IRL. If you guys look it up, it's historian_IRL, and it's a weekly vlog. It's just a thing for me to get out of the history all the time realm and talk about my dissertation and the work I'm doing and thoughts on things, all sorts of stuff like that. So if you want to check it out, it's Historian IRL. Thank you for that very generous question. Do you think we will ever decipher Greece's script? I have no idea what that is. Where would you want to travel? Oof. Where don't I want to travel? Top of my list these days is probably... I do want to go to Reykjavik, even though it's expensive and you need a car, apparently. But that would be nice. And see some cool stuff in South Korea. And... I mean, I've already been to Mexico City, but I'd love to do more in Mexico City. And I mean, I could say that, oh man. The problem is that if anybody ever describes a place that's not Bozeman, Montana or something, I kind of want to go. So I'll never run out of places I want to go. Script A. I've never heard of Script A. Mike Chen. Is Mike Chen that misogynist? I don't know. I think that might be Mike Chen, the friend of Lacey Green who hates Swagalians and everything. Aesop Rock is a song called Ben. Okay. Yeah, to call the European economy weak would be very strange. They have multitudes of the most of some of the biggest corporations in the world, and they have a lot of wealth, especially in places like Norway and Switzerland and such. But also a lot of soft power, cultural power. I don't know. I don't worry about Europe. Um, what's the best way to invade Poland? Oh man, um, I don't even know how do you invade? How does one invade Poland? Um, I guess the most successful way to invade Poland is start a multinational agreement with a shared common currency, and then absorb them into it, and basically impose all of the worst neoliberal policies on them. That's the best way to invade Poland, because Germany, it tried to invade Poland in the 30s and 40s, and that didn't really work out. The Soviet Union tried to take over Poland with military force. That didn't work out. Then Germany and France make the European Union, and Poland is done. Now they're in. They're in for life. The Zapatistas. I haven't heard a ton about the Zapatistas, but everything I have heard is good. They're like an indigenous leftist militia unit. And the second I say that the things I heard are good, they probably had some mass massacre or something that I haven't heard of. Because every time I like something, it's horrible. That's what I'm going to call the Nick Robinson rule. Anytime I like something, it turns out they're secretly horrible. The oldest country is San Marino, as it was the country that has constantly been a country since 1100 AD. Well, there you go. Masabe likes chicken. Very good. Chicken is nice. Anti-Angloism. So is there a movement of people who don't like the British? If so, I'm sure they certainly earned that reputation. Hi, I just got here. Hello, Doughboy DeVito. I like that name. Except for maybe the Mongols, because Mongols. When Poland has been conquered, even temporarily, it has been at an agreement between two or more countries. Partitions, World War II, except for maybe the Mongols. But as we all know, the Mongols are always the exception, right? Man, if you guys want a recommended history thing, if you guys can find it, I think you'd have to buy the archive thing from Dan Carlin's website now. But Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast has a series he did on the people of the steppes, and it's got to be one of the best several hours of audio content that I've had the pleasure of listening to. What's your opinion of games that take place in a historical setting? I'm a pretty big fan of them for the most part. Depends upon how well they do. Although there are a few things that I could say about them. So I think the extra credits people have said it more eloquently than I could. That a lot of games like the Paradox games have this concept of the nation state that is a bit more firm in the game than it was in real life. But also at the same time, they see the they see that the goals of nationhood, even in periods like the Middle Ages, were about economic development, science, and progress, which was not really a concept until surprisingly recently. And so, no matter, I mean, this is like, this is how postmodernism works. You're never going to have a full, perfect recreation of the past, just a modern day recreation of the past. And so, it's a little bit presentist, but that's video games. But they've probably done a pretty good pedagogical job of helping people who would otherwise have no interest in history learn about stuff, even if it's bad, like the random Call of Duty games or the Assassin's Creed series or something. Is there a historical relevant reason why blacks are associated with watermelon? Well, it is because watermelon is a crop that grows in the American South. And so people eat it, and it's cheap. So it was associated with poverty and such. That's about all I know. I don't know what their problem is. Watermelon's amazing. Why do I feel like you have seen... Thoughts on Alternate History Hub? That's another person I actually met at VidCon. Alternate History Hub's a good YouTube channel. It does interesting thought experiments. Don't always agree with the way that he says things are going to turn out, but it's a creative endeavor, so he's got the creative prerogative to do what he wants. I do like that he's incorporated more real history into his backstory explanation, and I'm really a big fan. Actually, Cody was part of the impetus of me starting Step Back History when I was floating around the idea of starting the channel, when I was just like, thinking about it in my head before I'd even made the channel. I actually got to Skype him. I just sent him an email out of the blue, and I said, hey, can I pick your brain about how you make videos and stuff like that over Skype? And he said yes, and we talked for a couple hours, and he gave me a lot of really good advice. And then when I ran into him at VidCon, he recognized me, and he was like, holy shit, and we hugged it out, and we hung out a few times over that week. It was pretty nice. All right. What do you think of geography now? It's all right. It's not my cup of tea because I think it's kind of targeted at a younger audience than me, but it's good. I think that it's a good idea. I think that he's doing a lot of that Barbie, I think his name is. He does a lot of really good work showcasing the wonderful variety of the world and looking at countries in strict alphabetical order. So it's not just like the Western white countries. And I've learned some pretty cool things from it, despite the fact that I don't subscribe to it anymore, but I used to. When I was subscribed, I learned a lot. Do you think that there will ever be world peace, even if it's temporary? There are harder things in the world to do, but I think that the main thing is we need to do away with the concept of countries, because it's countries that cause most of the violence. So maybe we couldn't get rid of violence forever, but we could at least get rid of state mass violence, i.e. wars. All right. When there are no humans, there'll be peace. That's another way too. In our climate change apocalypse a few hundred years from now, when there's 4 humans left. Why is there no U.S. state with the biggest city as their capital? I don't know. That's a good question. Is there going to be a second civil war? I don't think so, because the state, when it comes to the United States, the state's military is so big and so powerful that any organized uprising would be put down immediately. The United States is going to have a lot of turmoil and a lot of conflict over what it means to be an American, but the United States has far too much coercive violence power to, to end up in another civil war. I mean, if there was going to be an American Civil War, there'd probably have to be some sort of military disruption, because when the first American Civil War happened, it was because militaries were a lot more local back then, but now they're much more centralized and federal, mostly because of this exact reason, because of the First Civil War. So you would need to find, like, if America were to have another civil war, it would need to have some actual military on two different sides. And I don't know how that would happen in today's context. But like, there's not going to be like the militia or like, you know, Tea Party revolution, like actual revolution, because even the most organized uprising of like white men in their 50s is going to get put down almost instantly. The "What if slavery didn't exist" video I thought was pretty good when it talked about economics. I think that there was actually a response to it that I thought had a lot of good critiques. I think he's sort of undervalued. Like, I know that he like said we're not going to talk about the cruelty and the barbarism and the ruthlessness of the whole thing because we just want to talk about economics. But I think that that led to an alternate history that felt a little hollow. But hey. Knowledge Hub is good. I think Knowledge Hub is a channel he works on with his brother. And his brother was actually at VidCon, but I didn't see him because his brother is not, I don't know, he just wasn't super social, I guess. But yeah, I'm pretty happy. I think that both their channels are really good. If there is actually like a full-on attempted military coup in the U.S. military, I'd be surprised. But that's like the only way that I can see an American Civil War happening. And while it might be possible, I don't think it's very likely. Well, Fable Reader, why don't you do this thought about local to federal military? Because I'm not sure how I would do that. And the organization of the U.S. military is not exactly something I want to read a whole lot about in order to make a video. What's your opinion on documentaries? I like them. They are fun. I watch them fairly regularly. Do you like the United Kingdom? I've been there once. It was fun. I have a lot of British friends. They are good people. I mean, the United Kingdom has been up to some no good in the past with that whole attempting to conquer the planet thing, but, you know, that was like, the last time they tried that I can remember is like in the 80s. So, you know, it's been like 30 years. All right, posadism. All right, let's take a look. Cultist devotion to their leader and bizarrely positive views on nuclear war. Well, I don't like nuclear war. Oh, wow. Okay. So, if this Rational Wiki article is to be believed, posadism sounds like the funniest thing ever. So apparently, it's like a Trotskyist version of of Bolsheviks, like Soviet-y people, communists, who are like cultishly devoted to their founder, whose name is J. Posadas. They have very positive views on what nuclear war is, and then got into ufology, so UFOs and New Age, what Rational Wiki calls New Age babble. So that sounds like fun. Tito, like Yugoslavia was pretty brutal. The only thing I could say about Tito is that he is probably the best historical analog to Saddam Hussein you're going to get. And Tito and the breakup of Yugoslavia and Saddam Hussein and the breakup of Iraq I think will be considered very similar in the future. What do you think Canada should have 2 houses? Thoughts on the Senate? I don't really think that the Senate's necessary. I think its role is kind of atavistic, and it's a club for old white men or old men. There's all sorts of people, but a lot of old men who don't really do a whole lot. And apparently they can stay in power for a long time, even if they're like literal like sex offenders. Have you ever wondered if any military history channels on YouTube could possibly be full of extremely jingoistic right-wingers? Very much so. This is kind of one of my things that I wanted to do with Step Back, is that I wanted to get away from I did want to get away from military history because it was really popular on YouTube, and there is something to say about people who focus too much on military history. I think that their motives are a little outside of the academic stuff. All right. Thank you, Kelly. Who'd have known that legendary director Kevin Smith would come on here and cause a little shitstorm? Do I have top 10 historical movies? No, I don't. All right. Now I have to find out what. Only Bro's taking me on like a tour of like super weird, like alt leftist ideologies. So let's see, egoists. Individualist anarchism, huh? Or egoist socialism. I'm not exactly sure what the egoist part results in. Like, how are you an individualist and a hyper? I mean, egoist anarchists are pretty nice. Like, you've got Emma Goldman here and stuff, but egoist socialists? I don't know. Well, W.R. Costin, that is very nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, the focus of my channel is to try to get away from your typical History Channel content, which just talks about wars and elections and leaders and stuff, and try to get into other stories in history, but also show that history can be more interesting, because I think that people who talk about I didn't mean alt-left, I meant like alternative leftist ideologies. Like, these are very niche leftist ideologies. But Step Back tries to get outside of the regular stuff you'll see. And then I had a friend of mine notice that my videos typically boil into categories of strange history and the history, like opinion forming history. So like opinion forming to kind of explain something that's going on today in historical terms. All right. What do I think about the Great War YouTube channel? I think it's really good for what it is. Like, if you want to do military history well, the Great War is doing it about as good as you can do it. I did actually get a shout out on social media from them when I was just starting out, and that got me a lot of my like first 200 subscribers or something like that. So the Great War, I owe a lot to them. The problem is that, like, if you ask me about these opinions about a lot of these history channels, is that because there's so few of us, we talk to each other, and so you're getting me to comment on people that I actually know and have friends with. Have you heard of Devon in the UK? Like the city, or like Devon? Like, have you heard of Devon? He lives in the UK. All right, Max. Okay, egoist social. All right, let's. Look at this Max Stirner fella. This is a lot more hardcore when it's just me. Nihilism, huh? Oh, man. I'd have to think more about this Max Stirner. Okay. Egoism. All right. Have you ever heard of Stephen L. Hodge? Have not heard of Stephen L. Hodge. Um, all right. Ooh. So Devon is a county in the UK. I do not know anything about it except that it is a county in the UK. Hawk. Well, that just goes to show how well I know who Stephen L. Hawk is. What I can do is do a quick Google search and pretend I know who he is. So historian at Washington State. Essays in Russian social and economic history. I mean, it sounds fun. Here's the thing is that like there's so many history fields that like even though my channel goes all over the place because of like how specialized we all are, I can't tell you a lot about like your typical authors outside of like my own niche, which is like technology, communication, and media history, and like the United States, but like post World War II United States. And like that's like my wheelhouse. Well, Stephen L. Hawk, I guess if you, I don't know, he seems to be a Russia person. I don't know anything about the bunkers in Albania. My Eastern European stuff is pretty sparse. A pretty big military history buff. You're just gonna get, I get like, I don't have things against liking military history. It's just that I wanted to not do it because military history is just so oversaturated, and there's some people who have this concept that history um, is just it's just military stuff, and I just want to get away from that. Will you ever do a shout out video? I liked your collab with Cypher the Cynic Historian. Actually, how about more collabs? Actually, WR Costa and I have at least 2 collaborations coming out in the next month on my channel. One of those should result in a collaboration on a future video on one of their channels. And then I have 2 more coming up in the month after that. So if I don't know if I guess I can say the names of people, but like there's one that hasn't been done yet, but I don't want to I don't want to count my eggs before they hatch. But I know that I'm doing a video with Technicality, the channel Technicality. His name's Alex. We're doing a video. We're doing some videos together. Doing a video with Professor Elliott with some of his famous feasts and where to find them. We're gonna do a video. I'm gonna do a video with SEFD Science, Jabril. Those are the ones I have on the docket right now. History with Hilbert. This is a new one. I haven't seen History with Hilbert before, but I'll check them out. Thank you. Thank you, Cohen Berman. Um, so, but Cypher, the Cynic Historian, I think him and I are going to be doing a show together in next, not next week, but the week after. We're doing something together that he kind of want me to do. I don't know what exactly it is, but he was talking about it. So we still talk every once in a while. Have you ever believed in any myth before they were debunked? Yes. Yes. I actually was for probably 2 weeks a 9/11 truther before I started delving a little deeper. I um, I probably a lot of the myths that I debunked in my like myth series were probably things that I believed, but you know the typical things that you believe about history until they go away. But nothing specific is sticking out in my head. Um, Uncalled Judge's Bond, thank you for being so kind. I like this. Um, yeah, Rhodesia, like for Doy Boy DeVito, Dylan Roof, the mass shooter who killed a bunch of people because he was a vehement racist white nationalist figure, had a Rhodesian patch on his shirt or whatever, and it was gross. Um, H Bomber guy is very funny. He's very witty. Again, it's another person I actually met at VidCon, and we had a really good time. And him and I talk a little bit back and forth on Twitter, and he's really nice. I really like him. Um, I don't know what radical centrism is, but if it's like any like if like I'm gonna call radical centrism like Twitter centrists, and Twitter centrists are the worst. Um, like the president of Think Progress, she's gone a little crazy. Um, so the mapping thing. So I've been asked about mapping before too. So I think I said this in like my first stream or like in my New Year's stream, where like there's this community of people, and I can't imagine they're very old people. They must be like younger, but there's these like a lot of these channels, and they're really popular. Some of them, and they draw hypothetical maps of wars that happen, but like they have a lot of these YouTube channels where they pretend that countries are like people, and they have like wars, but like it's all done like with like the countries being personified in like some sort of human like the countries talk to each other on the map. I think they're just people who really like painting maps, and it's really popular, and a lot of people who are into that stuff like my channel. And I'm actually not super sure what the pleasure of the mapping thing comes out of. Like, I don't get it. Like, I watch it and I don't get it. I wish I did, but you know what? You do you, and that's what whatever works. Do you know Oversimplified? This is the channel that made Hitler Oversimplified, World War One Oversimplified. I'm going to check out that channel too. I have so many new channels to check out. Let's see. Oversimplified. Okay. Wait, is learning that you used to be kind of a 9/11 truther count as a milkshake duck moment? Oh man. Okay. So a milkshake duck is a internet slang term referring to a representation of a viral internet star who was briefly adored by the public prior to discovery of their distasteful or offensive past. Ah, so it's like a Ken Bone. Okay. Listen, when I was a 9/11 truther for like 2 weeks, I was also like 18 years old, and nobody believes all the things that they believed when they were 18. Nobody. Everybody changes their political, or everyone changes everything. And literally, I believe I was a 9/11 truther because I hadn't even paid attention to the entire thing, and then I watched Loose Change and was convinced until I read literally anything else, and then I became a super like bulldoggy anti-truther, or whatever you want to call it. Joris Berman, do you know my brother? I don't know. Who's your brother? Unsurprising opinions. Dylan Roof is an extremely evil, repulsive, cold, and hateful terrorist. Yep. Lion 24. I don't know what. Like, if you're talking about the mappers like will do stuff like. Yeah, I guess like if World War I was a bar fight, but like it's more that like they'll like do a video that's called like Future History of Europe, and they'll have like this map of Europe, and then they'll say like, then they'll just have like Ukraine decides randomly to invade Belarus, and then they'll just like draw in like MS Paint them painting over the country, and then they'll have like Russia and Poland or something talk. Like all the things they say usually make no geopolitical sense. It's just like a weird thing they like to do, and typically the videos have no voiceover. It's I don't understand how it works. History Buffs is a good YouTube channel. I think that they're good stuff. Your brother is Cohen Berman. Let's find out who Cohen Berman is. Is this a Belgian person? No, wait, that's Cohen Van Biesen. I don't know who Cohen Berman is.
He was in the chat earlier.
Oh, I'm sure he's a very nice person. I'm sorry, Joris. Oh, the history of the entire world, I guess, was pretty fun. I think the history of Japan, the Bill Wirtz guy, that guy's really fun. Oh, he just asked if you knew history of the. Yes. As far as I know, if that is the totality of the interaction I know that I've had with him. So I guess, yeah. Oh, history of the entire world, I guess, though, was a very fun video, and I think that guy has a lot of fun. I don't know if I can speak much to the educational value of it, but it's fun stuff. Mm-hmm. All right. All right. I think I'm going to have to call it now because I'm going to answer one more question that isn't. I'm going to answer one more question that isn't. Have you watched the channel? And then I'm going to go because my voice is starting to go, and I'd really like a glass of water. Have you seen the show Vikings? All right. Yes, I have seen the show Vikings. I thought it was decent, and then I stopped watching it, as I do with a lot of shows, for no real good reason, and I never picked it up again. And I probably will someday. My dad loves Vikings, and I have heard from a medievalist who studies that period that their concept of like not knowing about England and stuff like that is pretty off, but it's like, you know, it's a minor thing. All right. With that, I want to thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you guys for being wonderful subscribers. You guys hope you had a great month of content. Making another month of content very soon. Please stay tuned for next month. I think I have lined up a very, very special guest, and I hope you guys will be delighted to meet with her, and we'll have a really good time. All right. Cheers.